And there, folks, is the National Lampoon in a nutshell. That's also the National Lampoon in a nutshell. Okay.
Classy.
Thank you.
Drive the highway down the moon, past the billboard where you see me, see me, ask the people for their king.
Welcome back to the Silver Nitrate Witches Movie Review Brew, the podcast where we talk about how we talk about movies, and we are your Silver Nitrate Witches. I'm Isabelle Lang, a writer, academic editor, and tarot reader.
And I'm Laura Valenza, co-film editor at the Brooklyn Rail. I recently gave a TEDx talk about gender and film criticism. And today I am a strega, I think is the Italian word for witch, because there's a Roman toga party involved. I don't know. That was the best I could come up with.
I love it. Are you strega nona?
I never liked strega nona as a child. I know, I'm really sorry.
Did it make you anxious because there was spaghetti everywhere and it couldn't be cleaned up? I get that vibe.
I think something about strega nona just made me anxious.
It's an anxious book. Yeah, no, I get it. It's something I can appreciate now as an adult, but I absolutely understand the vibe of being a little nervous about it as a child. So just strega.
Yeah,
love it.
Just a strega. You know what? There's a frat party involved, so I'll be the house witch.
Oh, I love that.
There we go.
Yes. Okay.
Hey, we had to workshop it a little bit, but we got there.
We got there. And if you're wondering where exactly it is we are getting, today in our Summer School Scaries, we are going to be talking about the iconic college film Animal House.
Clearly the most educational of all of our education episodes
Obviously.
so far.
They go to class at one point. They take a midterm.
Do they?
Yes. Yes, someone goes to class at some point. Okay, so just to get us into some details, Animal House was released in the summer of 1978. Some other films coming out that summer were hits like Grease, Heaven Can Wait, and Jaws 2. It was released by the National Lampoon, and this was a huge deal for them. This was like a massive hit and a big move. The National Lampoon, if you are unfamiliar, began as a humor magazine in 1970, and Animal House was its first foray into film, which, as I said, was hugely successful. After that, the company went on to produce a ton more National Lampoon films, such as the Vacation movies, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, Van Wilder, Loaded Weapon, a bunch more. You know, obviously you have seen dozens of movies over your lifetime that start with National Lampoon's blank. That's the National Lampoon.
Wait, question.
Yes.
So is there an affiliation? Because it seems like a lot of the people in National Lampoon movies were also on SNL. So is there any official affiliation between the two?
Nothing official except that, again, a lot of actors who were involved in one project were involved in the other because they were both huge comedy scenes. And it was the same with some writers. They shared some writers across both of those projects. So nothing official. So like an SNL movie, like a produced by Lord Michaels movie, like Mean Girls or something like that, is not necessarily, or no, a better example is Caddyshack. Sorry, Caddyshack is something that is more likely considered an SNL movie. It was written by Doug Kenny, who was a part of National Lampoon. We'll talk about in a minute, but it is not officially a National Lampoon movie, even though I think at some point I wrote in here, Animal House is basically Caddyshack, but in college. Yeah. So,
interesting.
Similar in that it was just a lot of people working in the same circles in comedy in that era.
Okay.
Now, although there are lots of films, even like up to the point of today, that are branded with that National Lampoon name, technically, any films made after 1989 are not of the like original National Lampoon production team as like it was intended when it began. Because, again, this comedy entertainment situation apparently went under a hostile takeover in the late 80s by one of the actors and another LA producer who was involved in it. One of the actors was Tim Matheson, who plays Otter, and also Dr.
Dr.
Breland from Heart of Dixie, which I literally did not realize until Laura pointed it out this morning. She was like, you didn't tell me Dr. Breland was in this, and I had to Google it, and I was like, oh shit, that's him?
Yeah, and I've been rewatching Heart of Dixie, so it was good timing to see young Dr. Breland.
Anyway, so yeah, Tim Matheson and then another LA producer who had kind of been involved with some National Lampoon projects, Daniel Grodnick, made this hostile takeover and then started selling film rights to the National Lampoon brand name.
Wait, question. What exactly is a hostile takeover of a comedy magazine?
It's literally just the same as other hostile takeovers do. They just achieved a majority of the shares and then marched in and said to Doug Kenny, fuck off, bye. Or
so
some version of it.
Hostile is actually a financial term.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It just means it's a takeover that is not agreed upon by every shareholder.
Okay.
Some other fun little just like snippets of information about some National Lampoon history. I was particularly interested in this because I grew up watching National Lampoon movies like Animal House, Christmas Vacation. These were like staples in my household growing up. And I had never really gotten into any of the actual like nuts and bolts of them as a company, so I was really fascinated learning about some of this. One thing that I did come across I forgot was already out there. I just haven't actually watched it yet, but I really do want to. And I wish I had had time to do so before this episode recording. But there is a book that came out in 2006 and then a movie that came out in 2018 called A Futile and Stupid Gesture, which is the story of National Lampoon's rise as a magazine and production company during its successful years in like the 70s and then about its sort of fall in the 80s and 90s, and basically like focuses on Doug Kenny, who was the first CEO of the magazine and the writer of these films at the time. And you laughed at the name of the book. It is actually named after an iconic line from Animal House. When the fraternity starts to plan its epic attack of the homecoming parade, Otter states they have to do one last stupid and futile gesture to take the university down, which I think is pretty neat. Okay, so back to the movie itself. We are exiting National Lampoon Land, and we are back here at Faber University.
Wait, so we're digging into Animal House now, specifically?
Yes, now we're going into Animal House specifically and not National Lampoon. So it was directed by John Landis. He also directed things like Blues Brothers and Coming to America, and written by a handful of National Lampoon writers, including Harold Ramis, who everyone might know as one of the Ghostbusters. He was Egon, the one with the glasses who goes out with Annie Potts.
And he's also in Baby Boom.
Oh, yeah, he is in Baby Boom. Oh, I love him in Baby Boom.
Also the one with the glasses.
Also the one with the glasses.
Until the baby destroys them.
Yeah. Douglas Kenny, who I mentioned before, he was the first editor-in-chief of the National Lampoon magazine. He's also the head writer for Caddyshack, so again, if that's a film you're familiar with, if it seems similar to Animal House, that's why. And Chris Miller, who I unfortunately don't have any other information about, sorry.
Sorry, Chris Miller.
Anyway, the budget is estimated by a number of sources to be about $3 million, and I have a hard time believing that, but maybe it's in like inflation, like, you know, $3 million today, but not necessarily $3 million in 1978. I don't know. It just feels like a very low budget movie. And it grossed over 141.
I mean, $3 million is a really low budget. Like, I think $3 million was
even
like
in the 70s?
The Witch budget. Oh, I don't know.
Right?
Actually, yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
That's the part I have a hard time believing. Yeah. Well, it grossed over $141 million at the box office, with almost $300,000 in just its opening weekend alone. So for 1978, that was like a really big deal. And the plot itself, which we'll get into some details about the plot as loosely as we can call it a plot, but it was based on stories that had been written and published in the National Lampoon magazine, which were in turn based on Harold Ramis's own experiences as a member of the Zeta Beta Tau fraternity at Washington University in St. Louis, and Chris Miller's experiences at the Alpha Delta Phi fraternity at Dartmouth.
So they were based on very smart schools.
Yeah.
But very dumb experiences.
Because these are the people who turned out to be writers, not like doctors and lawyers.
One of the characters in the little thing at the end where they do what happened to everybody, one of the characters, they say, becomes editor, National Lampoon.
Yep. I forget which one that is, but yeah, it's great.
I forget too.
Okay, so speaking of the little where are they now blurbs at the end of the movie, the plot itself. So this film takes place over just the fall semester, or like just like the first half, really, like so the fall quarter, the first like fall quarter of 1962 at the fictional Faber University. Two first-year students and friends, Larry and Kent, are doing the rounds at various parties during rush week. They are very politely but absolutely shown that they are not Omega House material at their party, which is the very fancy, expensive, well-bred, well-to-do fraternity. They are very kindly shown like what is clearly the loser corner of the party twice.
The Nazi fraternity.
Yes, Laura pointed out this morning that their fraternity flag is suspicious.
Yeah, vaguely Nazi-ish, or maybe not so vaguely.
Yeah, we won't post pictures of it, but you should look it up.
Yeah, there's also the Niedermeyer character who is very overtly Nazi-ish.
Yes, because he's like the head of the ROTC. Yeah, he's fucking scary.
Oh, is that what they were?
They were ROTC. We'll talk about it. Yeah. Okay, so
I wasn't sure what was going on there.
Yeah. After being shunned, I as I was watching this, I was like, I feel like Laura's not going to know what ROTC is.
No, that went over my head. I did not know that was what that was.
Okay, so after being like shunned at the Omega party, they make their way to the Delta House, where Kent's older brother had been a member a few years ago, making him a legacy, so kind of a big deal that he show up. The Delta House party is drastically different from the Omegas from the start. They have the loudest music, the cheapest beer, the coolest fish tank. And the party is occasionally and hilariously punctuated by Tim Matheson running around going, "Eric Stratton, Rush Chairman, damn glad to meet ya." And additionally, my favorite part of the movie, which is a very young and handsome Bruce McGill riding a motorcycle up the stairs through the middle of a crowd of people.
It's also, it looks like a haunted house.
Oh, yeah. It, like, if you imagine, like, the kitschy, cliched version of a frat party house, or sorry, of a frat house that you see in modern media today, it is 1,000% based on this house from Animal House. Like the what are they called in Bob's Burgers? The Beta House that Bob goes to be a chef for a while, and that they find out their dentist used to be a member of, and he still hangs out there all the time in a creepy way. That house is absolutely supposed to be like based off of the Deltas at an Animal House. Okay, so Larry and Kent obviously decide to rush for the Deltas because they're way cooler. They're accepted as pledges. And then, you know, as I said, the plot is a very loose way to describe this movie because there's not much of one. General hilarity just kind of ensues.
No, it's very There were multiple times watching this movie where I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, this is exactly where I've said this reminds me a bit of Caddyshack, which is unsurprising because Doug Kenny wrote it too, which again, if you're familiar with Caddyshack, there's not really a plot. It's just kind of a series of connected bits. Okay, so there is a main conflict, though, which is that the dean of the university is trying to do anything he can to revoke the Delta Charter, which he finally does by ensuring they all fail their midterms and they lack the grades to remain an active organization.
Wait,
once they find
pause.
this out, yes.
They are on secret double probation.
They are on double secret probation at the beginning of the movie,
yes.
and the dean is just looking for a way to edge that up and get him the fuck out of here. I forget about double secret probation. So, of course, the Deltas refuse to take this sitting down, and they plan an elaborate sabotage of the homecoming parade in the middle of town right before the end credits. And then, as Laura pointed out earlier, the movie ends with these silly little, like, freeze frames and sort of a, where are they now? Or they list, like, this person, class of 1962, defense attorney, this person, class of 1963, editor-in-chief of National Lampoon magazine. My favorite one is, again, Bruce McGill. I just love Bruce McGill. He's delightful. I forget his character's name, but it's like something, class of whatever, whereabouts unknown.
Yes. I also love, was it John Belushi's character that was like, he's like now a U.S. senator or something
yes,
like that?
He steals, the, like, you know, very upper crust, fancy, sorority girl that Otter has been trying to get with the whole time. He, like, grabs her by the waist.
Wasn't Otter with her in the past, and now he's trying to get back with her?
Yes. And
yes.
John Belushi, grabs her by the waist, pulls her into, like, a Cadillac convertible, and just drives off into the sunset, and their little title card is, like, Senator and Mrs. Bartowski.
That was my favorite one.
Yeah, that is a good one.
And it came right after we learned that he had a, 0 point something GPA?
It was really low. He had a GPA.
I think it was less than 1.
It was less than 1. The only one who had a complete 0.0 was, again, my favorite, Bruce McGill. D-Day is his character's name. He had a 0.0 because he just never showed up to class and nobody knew where the fuck he was at any point in time.
Mm-hmm. He also had a good mustache. Normally, I would say mustache is a mistake, but he has a good mustache.
Work! Absolutely. Okay, anything, again, plot-wise, I apply the term loosely, that you feel like we're missing?
Well, I would point out the English teacher that one of the characters' girlfriends sleeps with.
Yes, there's
and
a very...
I just want to... Yeah, Mr. Bennett from Pride and Prejudice.
Yes,
but
Mr.
I also
Bennett,
just want to point
President
out...
Snow, Donald Sutherland.
I have never seen somebody wear so much corduroy.
Well, he was a literature professor in the 60s. He had to wear corduroy, Laura.
It was like a corduroy 3-piece suit.
Yes. He teaches a class that Boone's girlfriend Kate and Larry are both in, and they kind of get invited to go hang out with him, and Boone comes with him. They all get high for, I think, presumably the first time with him, and then the professor and Kate kind of continue to hang out more on the DL, and then, yeah, she sleeps with him. And then their title card, Boone and Kate's, is like, you know, class of whatever, married 1964, divorced 1969. Because that was never going to work out.
Yeah, but also I'm like, what did they get into in 1969 that specifically ended their marriage?
Oh my god, for real.
Also, I would also like to add that we see a statue of the school's founder, Emil Faber, in the beginning with the quote, "Knowledge is good."
Yep. Love it.
Yep.
Okay, so you had mentioned, we were talking earlier, you had seen it once before, but not really.
Technically,
do you want to tell us about your
before.
various experiences of viewing? You don't have to tell the original story, but tell me what your thoughts were going into this.
Okay, I could not remember any of it. I saw it once in high school at the after party of an actual party. It involved a 6-pack of beer and a handle of rum. I think pretty much most of the handle of rum. And I don't remember this movie at all. But as I was rewatching it today, I realized I do remember the scene in the yellow convertible where the rich blonde girl is giving the rich blonde guy a hand job. And she is using latex gloves. That's it. That's all I recall.
We're going to talk about that, because this happens not once but twice in the film with 2 different rich blonde girls.
Yeah, do they both have latex gloves?
They both have latex gloves on. It's hilarious.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, it had been a while since I had seen this, but I definitely have seen it a lot. I've always liked this movie. I remember watching it really young and being like 100% too young to get most of the jokes. I think the primary thing I remember from this movie growing up was the food fight scene in the cafeteria. I remember there was a plot point where they decide to, like, they find the obituary of a girl who has died recently at a local women's college. And they decide to use that to try to go pick up chicks by pretending to be, like, one of them pretends to be her fiance who didn't know she was dead, and, like, they get a bunch of sympathy. I remember watching that as a kid and not realizing it was, like, a joke and they were trying to pull off a scheme, and thinking that, like, his fiance had really died. And I'm like, I don't understand why they're, like, giggly and laughy. This is so fucked up.
Oh my god.
And then I remember a lot in high school, my sister, Sarah, was the class president her senior year, and she would go around introducing herself to everybody as Sarah Lang, senior class president. Damn glad to meet you.
I also have never seen somebody do so much acting with nothing but their eyebrows.
John Belushi has alarmingly few lines in this movie, and when you realize he says next to nothing. It's surprising because he is like such a screen stealer just with his fucking crazy eyebrows.
Eyebrows say everything.
They are the star of the show. The whole, like, in the cafeteria before he even sits down, like the 2-minute long sustained shot of him just walking by all the food. So much happens,
really
and yet nothing happens.
Food.
Well, that was cafeteria food in the 60s.
Also, I mean, like, his eyebrows are so flexible. I'm pretty sure he could have done Morse code with them.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Probably.
I think that's what works so well about Blues Brothers, is that you can't see his eyes, but you can still see his eyebrows over the sunglasses.
There you go.
Yeah.
I also appreciated the scene at, I think it is at the Toga party, where you cut between the freshman boy who picks up the cashier at the grocery store and Tim Matheson's character.
Oh my god.
Otter, who picks up
seducing
the dean's wife, the dean who has him on double secret probation. He seduces his wife and gets her to come to this Toga party, and it just keeps cutting between the two of them because Tim Matheson is very charming and
smooth
very
talker.
smooth. Yes, and it's
man.
all. His whole setup is very, like, leopard print and sexy, and
It's by far the cleanest room in the frat house.
Yes, and it is completely designed to seduce women.
Yeah.
And then you cut to the freshman who's borrowing somebody's utterly disgusting room that on top of that has that terrible Confederate flag in the background. And he can't even get the girl's bra off.
He's like, I think this is locked or something. Oh my god.
Yeah.
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 All right. So this was a fun one because, again, it was because of its, like, age. I did actually get to go through some, like, newspaper archives. I always do enjoy anytime we get to troll through newspaper reviews as opposed to just finding stuff on the internet. And it was fun. Of course, it was bothersome because anytime you do that, the first, like, 17 pages are just, like, movie listings for, like, when and where you can watch it. But then it held the same kind of surprise for me that I did with School of Rock. Is I knew, like, it obviously now is this huge cult classic. People love it. It's like I've read it on a few more contemporary discussions. We're talking about how it's, like, been on these list of, like, best 100 movies. It's in the Library of Congress as, like, an important cultural movie. It's something that is very beloved now, but I made the same assumption I did with School of Rock, is that I thought some people were going to love it, other people were going to be like, it's gross and bawdy and stupid.
Okay, I have to be honest, it did actually make me laugh out loud, but for the most part, I was like, this is so stupid and kind of gross.
It is gross and bawdy and stupid, but so let me, I'm just going to dive right into our first review because I think it captures this whole vibe we're going with. So from the Philadelphia Daily News, there is a section called Films Currently in Town, compiled by passionate moviegoer Joe Baltic, which I just think is an adorable section of a local paper. Okay, so Joe writes, National Lampoon's Animal House. Shoddy, offensive, decidedly lowbrow. This is the same kind of comic aberration as last year's The Choir Boys, which was a movie, like a comedy movie from the 70s about, like, dumb, unprofessional cops just getting up to shenanigans.
Okay, so far this headline just makes me think of New York Magazine and how they always have, like, the graph at the back that has the two axes, and each point is, like, lowbrow, highbrow, despicable, brilliant. So I feel like we've put this movie in between despicable and lowbrow.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
Or we put it between lowbrow and brilliant. I don't know.
Okay, we're coming up to it.
For debate.
Instead of police, like the Choir Boys, we're stuck with fraternity types. The comedy here is anti-intellectual and very physical, and the film has a raised finger morality. Its characters, meanwhile, slobber, black out, run amok, and even give a horse cardiac arrest. The clods who made this cinema
that was
cesspool...
one of the funniest scenes, I thought.
The clods who made this cinema cesspool expect us to laugh our heads off. And you know what? We will. Not because we have lousy taste, but because the film is genuinely funny. That's right. Shameless as it may be, it's a funny film, and the professionalism of stars Tim Matheson and Thomas Hulse is a nice, welcome touch. Tim Matheson, as we mentioned, is the guy that's in more contemporary things you might recognize, like Heart of Dixie and Virgin River. And
Basically
Thomas,
the same character in both of those shows.
yeah, basically.
too.
And Thomas
Yeah.
Hulse is most widely known as Mozart in Amadeus, which is hilarious because in our last full episode we had Salieri. So how perfect.
There you go. Also, can I just say that, like, actually, it wasn't so much the horse having a heart attack that made me laugh. It was the scene after that.
Oh my god, yes.
They're having a very serious
The dean
meeting
and the mayor
about
of the town are meeting about the homecoming
the
parade.
homecoming parade, and in the background somebody comes in with a chainsaw, and you just see the horse's stiff legs sticking up above.
Yeah, he's at first he's
so
measuring.
bad.
He's got a
It's
measuring
so
tape and he's
bad.
measuring the horse.
Yeah.
And he's measuring the door to see how they're gonna get it out, and then he just comes in with a chainsaw and rips it, and then the scene cuts.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And then I also just put in here because I thought you would appreciate this this guy in the little next review, because Jaws 2 again also came out that same summer. Absolutely slammed Jaws 2 in the blurb right after Animal House, stating, "The ads promise that the film will keep us out of the water. Not quite. It's more likely to keep us out of the movie theaters."
Oh, burn.
I don't know if you have feelings about Jaws 2. I know you have feelings about Jaws. I know it's a very important piece of New Jersey cinema.
I have never seen any of the follow-ups to Jaws. I don't really believe in sequels.
That's fair.
Yeah. And I mean, I am pretty sure that I have no idea which one it was. I'm pretty sure I have caught parts of one of the sequels to Jaws on TV at one point, but I did not stick around to watch the whole thing. My impression of it was that it turned into like really bad slasher movies. I don't know that any of the sequels are even Steven Spielberg movies. I mean, I'd have to look that up to check.
Jaws 2 is
but
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he talked about it extensively in this review.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a few other funny blurbs that are kind of in that same vein of people, kind of bait and switching you sort of thing. Another from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch wrote, "Silly, sophomoric, broad, body, raucous humor delivered with a rapid-fire pace that often makes it seem funnier. There are moments that are excruciatingly funny, and there are some that are totally dumb, but the overall result is considerable laughter." And then one more from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. "A big grocer, in every meaning of the word." This raucous farce about a boisterous fraternity in 1962 gets as many laughs from its joyful bad taste as it does from any true comic spirit. John Belushi is extraordinary as the most animalistic undergrad of all, wolfing down sandwiches in one gulp, peeking in sorority windows, spitting food in people's faces. Audiences seem to find him lovable. B-, as in the whole movie gets a B-.
Well, that's a better grade than any of the characters received at Faber College.
Absolutely.
There were a lot of points in this movie where I was like, this is so stupid, and I had to stop and keep reminding myself, it is called Animal House.
Yeah.
The name does say it all.
There are some
And
parts,
I do believe you have to meet a movie on its own terms.
you gotta meet it on its terms. There's still some, I will never be able to fully, with my eyes open, watch the part where John Belushi fills his mouth with mashed potatoes and then spits it on everybody and tells them he's a zit.
That was
No.
so gross.
I always
so
have to close
gross.
my eyes when that's happening because I'm I love John Belushi. Not that much.
There were actually a surprising amount of moments where I had to look away in this movie. And it's I don't know that I've ever had to look away during a comedy.
Yeah. And what other parts did you feel like you had to look away?
Well, the food, the whole cafeteria.
The whole cafeteria
scene.
scene,
The food
yeah.
nauseated me so much. I could not do that.
So much Jell-O.
Oh, I know. So much that green color that on anything else would
Yeah.
be beautiful, but on food is just wrong.
Yeah.
And I feel like there were some other scenes too that I was no, I can't do this.
That's fair. There's definitely some. The ROTC part where Niedermeyer is spitting every time he says, "Pledge pin." I can't.
Yeah, that might have been one of them. Yeah.
So are you familiar with ROTC?
Yeah, I've heard of ROTC.
I
just didn't know. I don't think I've ever witnessed ROTC.
It's like...
But their ROTC, though, was Nazi-ish.
Absolutely. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And I don't know any... And maybe because it was supposed to be like some fancy New England place. I don't know any ROTC that has like a guy on a horse. And I went to an agricultural college, okay? There were plenty of horses on campus. Nobody's just riding them around on the football field.
I assumed that was just part of the comedy. I mean, when they're taking all of their stuff, when they close down the Delta fraternity at the end, and they're taking all their stuff back, I mean, an entire, like, cow comes out of the house. So
oh my god, yes, I forgot about the cow.
Part of the absurdity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did also...
That was what I had to look away from. I couldn't watch Niedermeyer feeding his horse a carrot with his own mouth. I had to look away.
Okay, nobody talks about this in the reviews because I think it was 1978 and it's, I don't know, a weird masculinity thing. One of my favorite bits that I recalled this time, watching it through this time, is when Kate is first meeting Larry at the frat party, and like he's trying to figure out where the Rush guy is. She's like, "Oh, Boone and Otter are upstairs. They're very well-known homosexuals," as a joke. And then I was like, "But what if Otter and Boone were very well-known homosexuals?" And then I started reading this whole movie with a queer lens, and it did not disappoint.
Then when it does cut to Otter and Boone upstairs,
Otter
they're
is
talking
just
about that
changing
dildo.
his clothes.
Yeah.
He's just completely butt-ass naked, which makes it so much weirder now that I know that that's Dr.
And then there's a giant dildo with duct tape on it. I have questions about that.
Right? Okay, so then the horse thing, where he's feeding the horse the carrot from his own mouth, is another weird homoerotic moment. And then Kent is underneath him, like, Niedermeyer is straddling Kent underneath him while Kent does push-ups into Niedermeyer's crotch. That's where I keep bringing up the Greg guy in the convertible with the two nondescript blonde women who are trying to give him a blowjob, a hand job. Trying being the operative word, because they both have to pause at some point and go, "Greg, is this doing anything?" Because he cannot seem to get off with either of these two women and spends the entire time that he is getting a hand job talking about other men. Just so much queerness in this movie that no one's pointing out.
And even those two women have the comically large blonde wigs on that feel almost like maximalize femininity that's so performative it's almost like drag.
They are like carbon copies of like the woman at a university in the 60s strictly to meet their husband. If neither of them talked during the movie, you probably wouldn't be able to tell them apart. Oh my god. Okay, so no one really talks about those things, and I just wanted to bring them up because I'm like, really
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting that, because there was a part of me watching this where I was like, wow, has this movie really not aged well? And then there's another part of me that was like, actually, it's weirdly, like, very subversive. Like, just when you're like, this is really offensive territory, you're kind of like, hey, but what are they actually, like, there's something kind of weirdly subversive happening underneath all the offensive stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there, folks, is the National Lampoon in a nutshell. That's also the National Lampoon in a nutshell. Okay.
Classy.
Thank you. Okay, so when I did start to actually getting into, like, fuller length, more, like, kind of digging into it reviews, one thing I just thought was interesting, I don't know if it really says much, but they were kind of, like, buried in the back of these papers on a page just, like, full of ads. There was, like, a 1-inch strip column for this review, and then the rest of the page was just ads for random shit. Like, it was almost like, I don't know, I got the impression people were like, this movie's not gonna make much of it, don't, like, give it a whole, front page, anything importance or whatever. And so I just thought that was interesting. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I was like, this is kind of funny. So in the Des Moines Tribune by Bob Green, the title is "Lampoon Wins, Loses with Latest Humor Attempts." which is a little confusing. He basically starts off, so apparently in 1974, in their like print publication, they published like a phony high school yearbook that I get the impression was like basically full of like high school kind of stereotypes of figures and characters, and it was written by like these guys Harold Ramis and Chris Miller, who were just kind of going through like, here's all of the weirdos and assholes and jocks and creeps that we all probably knew in high school. And it was like this really big comedy hit. People absolutely loved this thing, and feel like it was kind of the impetus for something like Animal House as well. So this guy Bob starts off with like the first over half of this article about Animal House, praising this particular high school yearbook publication from the National Lampoon, talking about how amazing it was, and then immediately switches to like how it's not as funny as it used to be, like kind of blaming them for like jumping the shark almost. He writes, "Some say that the National Lampoon is not nearly as funny as it was in the early 70s. In any event, the National Lampoon prepares 2 special projects this summer. One is a parody of a small-town Sunday newspaper. The other is the movie National Lampoon's Animal House. One is a loser. The other is a masterpiece." The newspaper obviously is the loser, and he gets 3 more paragraphs explaining just why it's so bad.
Okay.
And then finally, at the end, he gets to the movie he's here to review. And he says, "But the movie, National Lampoon's Animal House, is to movies what National Lampoon's high school yearbook was to print. I saw a sneak preview of the movie the other night. It was the only time in memory that an audience was screaming so hard with laughter that a significant portion of the dialogue was lost. The very thing that made the yearbook parody work, an intense identification with time and place combined with the perverse and piercing state of Lampoon writers, make National Lampoon's Animal House seem destined to be the big movie of the year. Forget sensitivity and compassion, by the way. If you want to feel sensitive, go see An Unmarried Woman. This movie is strictly for laughs, and it never lets up, not even to give the audience a chance to breathe."
I was, while watching this, thinking this would be a fun movie to see in the movie theater. Like, it's something that I think would become funnier with
people.
A really engaged audience.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember thinking, like, we went to go see The Naked Gun a while ago when Laura was in town, and we were the only people in the theater, and it was fun. But I remember thinking at some points, like, this is the kind of comedy movie that's much better with like a whole big crowd of people who are all kind of laughing and giggling at just how stupid it is. And I would agree with Animal House.
And it was stupid.
It was so stupid.
It was really stupid, but it was funny.
Yeah. Okay, so he continues, "Parts of it, National Lampoon's Animal House, are tasteless, like all Lampoon enterprises. But it's a tastelessness that will find a huge audience." I just love how, like, he's like throughout this whole thing, like, okay, we all know National Lampoon is a crock of shit these days, right? But this is actually pretty funny. The movie uses every aspect of 1962 college life as takeoff points, from Louie Louie to ROTC to toga parties, and as with all the characters in the yearbook parody, the casting is so on the mark as to be eerie. As the closing credits rolled, the audience cheered aloud. So for those of you who, in light of certain recent columns, have been asking what it takes to please me, apparently he had been slamming a lot of other pop media lately, which is unsurprising. National Lampoon's Animal House is the answer. See you at the popcorn counter.
Interesting. Did you get the sense about how mainstream or popular the actual National Lampoon magazine was? Because I really only ever heard of the movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always knew it was like something besides the movie, because that's where like it gets that tagline, National Lampoon's whatever. I literally hadn't gone into any really of the history or what else it did until researching for this. I do get the impression that this high school yearbook thing was a big deal. And that it was definitely popular as a magazine in its beginnings in the 70s when Doug Kenny was the CEO and like head person in charge of it. A lot of the writers came from this other comedy publication called Harvard Lampoon, and like moved over here and created their own thing. And then it went through it. I get the impression that in the 70s it was big and hilarious, and because so many people who were associated with it were also associated with stuff like SNL, it was a really cool deal. And then because of this weird takeover and starting to sell off just the name to, like, basically you could, like, buy the rights to slap the name on the beginning of your movie title, is where, like, you know, I guess some of them would say, like, standards started to change, and it was just not the same kind of, how does he describe it? Because I really like what he says.
Not the high standards of Animal House.
An intense identification with time and place combined with the perverse and piercing state of mind of Lampoon writers. I think, yeah, it was a comedy that was really focused on, like, timeliness of the experience, and then it just kind of became slapstick.
To that point, do you think that, like, do you have any theories about the choice to set the movie in 1962?
My best guess is because a combination of factors that, you know, the writers who were writing this movie in, like, the mid-70s would have been, like, in the height of or about to graduate from college at that point. And also, I forget, there is an article where we talk, I bring it up later and I forget, or maybe I bring it up in my final thoughts. At that point, it is taking place right before, like, the Vietnam conflict begins. And I think that is also, like, an unspoken but important part of it. Like, when the dean, like, ushers them all into his office and rattles off their abysmal grade point averages and how they're all going to be kicked out of college, he makes this comment, which, again, like, I've called, like, all your local draft boards and told them that you were available to be drafted, because you could get certain dispensations from being drafted if you were, like, actively enrolled in college. And they, you know, the characters themselves might not have known this at the time, but you as a viewer in 1978 knows, like, oh, he's essentially like killing all these guys because they're going to be drafted to Vietnam, and, like, how fucked up that is.
That reminds me that Nita Meyer's What Happened to Him blurb
was that he was killed in Vietnam by his own troops. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I kind of wondered too if it was because 1962, I mean, it does come with, like, the threat of Vietnam, but 1962 I feel like is still basically the 50s, and the 50s were such a conservative moment.
Oh, yeah.
In American history, and so I feel like that's sort of such, like, ripe territory for ridicule.
I mean, yeah, because they compared the Omega House.
Yeah.
And Lincoln, and like, these are our ladies Babs and Margaret, and
yeah. And then I wonder too if on top of that as well, if it kind of doing that very, like, conservative moment in history, like, when Vietnam is just starting and, like, right before you get all that civil rights legislation too, it kind of sets up a lot of the jokes lampooning race relations and segregation in the United States well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite details I learned in researching this movie is that the band, Otis Day and the Knights, was completely made up for this film, but then everybody loved them so much as a part of the movie that guy, like, actually hired band members and went off and started touring the country as Otis Day and the Knights to some success, which I think is kind of neat.
That is my favorite fun fact about this movie. I thought that was really funny that they have this totally trashy Toga party, and then they actually have this, like, really great live band.
I know, God.
Yeah.
I was watching it in my apartment, and I have taken to, in the evening when I start running the dishwasher, if I am watching TV, I will put my noise-canceling headphones, connect them to my TV so I don't have to hear the dishwasher. And I was basically sitting in my entirely silent apartment going, shout a little bit louder now, shout a little bit louder now, and dancing. And I'm like, if anybody was to walk in and see this, they'd be very confused. I want to move on to an interesting review that I'm surprised I had kind of a lot of, like, I don't know exactly what feelings, but I had some feelings about it. It was weird. Stuart Emmerich of the Atlanta Constitution wrote, Lampoon's mastermind doesn't look the part. And honestly, first of all, this might have been because I don't think Stewart actually knew this person or talked to him very well at all because he didn't get the poor guy's name right. He interviews Maddie Simmons, who is at this point, like, in charge of the National Lampoon, but he refers to him as Manny Simmons, because I got real confused, and I spent a good 10 minutes Googling Manny Simmons before I realized he had just written this poor fucker's name wrong. Anyway. Okay. But he writes, Manny Simmons, again, Maddie, doesn't look like the type of person who would be one of the guiding lights behind the successful National Lampoon empire. Nattily attired in a muted tan suit and striped tie, his face accented by a pair of yellow-tinted aviator glasses topped by a stylishly coiffed graying hair, this 51-year-old entrepreneur hardly fits the image of someone who has made a decent fortune from a magazine that has taken low humor to new heights and a movie that takes accurate and hilarious potshots at practically every American institution. While Simmons says he is naturally pleased with the initial success of the film, he adds that it was something he tried not to expect when the movie was first released. I've been in too many businesses for too many years not to learn that you never anticipate success. You get disappointed a lot, but when I saw how crowds reacted to the film during early screenings, I knew it looked like we had something. What Simmons thinks he and the other brains behind National Lampoon, this is where I take some issue, have is an accurate pulse on the type of humor that American audiences want to see. The kind of humor that made Bob Hope famous is dated. People don't want it anymore. They're too smart to laugh at mother-in-law jokes. They want humor they can relate to that they know is true. Animal House is real. People know it, and that is what makes it so funny. Simmons says this sort of black humor, which holds nothing or no one sacred in its church for laughs, was started by Lenny Bruce, but popularized by National Lampoon. Before we came along, no one made jokes about death, about illness, about poverty. These subjects were sacrosanct, but we proved they could be funny, and we paved the way for such things as Norman Lear's All in the Family and Maude. A lot of people thought we were sick, but a lot more people thought we were funny. You have a face going on. What are you thinking?
Has this man never seen a Mae West movie?
Okay, so what I think is interesting
or
about this,
heard of vaudeville.
So again, okay, I looked into Matty West when I finally realized how to fucking spell his name. So he did have an early career as a newspaper reporter, so like as a journalist and a writer of some sort, but he kind of quickly moved into just like he calls himself an entrepreneur. He moved very quickly into like a producer kind of role and just started picking up projects and dropping them and just like going where the money was and where he saw the trends interesting. So what's interesting to me about this is that I don't get the impression Matty Simmons had anything to actually do with the writing of the film. But he's praising how great and amazing like his project is at contemporary humor and how what we're doing that nobody has done before, even though these are absolutely jokes that have been done before, just, you know, in different genres and in different styles. It made me think of how very recently
Charlie Chaplin.
Right. I hate to be another person who throws Jojo Siwa under the bus, but it makes me think of in that interview where she was like, I'm inventing a new genre. It's called gay pop. And then all of these queer pop artists were like, hello? So
yeah. Oh, honey.
Yeah.
That reminds me when 50 Shades of Grey came out and people were like, oh my god, nobody's ever written like such a sadomasochistic book before. And I'm like, you realize the etymology of the words sadism and masochism literally come from two authors from
who
like
wrote that
200
stuff.
years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was interesting, especially too, because he's like going off and praising how amazing this particular thing is, which is only really that way because of the staff and the writers they have at this point. And then he ends up being one of the people who hugely screws over the magazine and starts to tank it in the 80s, because in the mid 80s, he fires the entire editorial staff of the National Lampoon that has been there thus far and replaces them with his two sons.
Nepo babies!
Yeah, before realizing what a giant mistake that was, and that's how it ends up being, that's how he ends up selling his shares to Matheson and Grodnick, who end up taking over a few years later anyway. Mm-hmm. So, I just thought that was
Wait, Matheson and who was the other one?
Grodnick. I think it's David Grodnick. So, weird production history, weird feelings all around, but I thought it was, of all of the people involved in the creation of this film, I thought it was so strange that, like, that's the person that you talk to, and you got his name wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't really, I mean, obviously I could find some more contemporary things where, like, Harold Ramis is talking to people about, like, his career and might talk about, like, the creation of Animal House, but there's really nothing of the time of its release that seems to be interested in speaking to the writers themselves and what that experience was like. And I think that's really weird and kind of fucked up. Yeah. So moving right along to a review I like a lot better. Walter Sobczak of the Daily Hampshire Gazette. It's got a weird title. Animal House, touching, tender, tee-hee.
I don't know that touching and tender are words
Right.
I would use.
And so, and that's why...
Tee-hee. Yes.
So I'm wondering if, like, he's like, tee-hee, like, this is a joke, it's not touching and tender, or I don't know. But I do love this review.
Okay.
And it's going to be fun.
You know what? Maybe some editor slapped that headline on, and it wasn't even his headline.
I don't get the tee-hee. You'll understand the touching and tender in a moment, though.
Okay.
National Lampoon's Animal House is a subtle, sensitive portrayal of the delicate social balance found in small-town college in the early 60s. The stark, Bergman-esque film attempts to convey the intense alienation that the universal freshman is faced with upon entering college society, or in a larger sense, that we all feel we are forced to assume the responsibilities and attendant joys of adulthood. This does it in so refined and restrained a manner that the viewer is allowed time to introspect lazily along with it. Well, not exactly. Go ahead.
No, I just want you to repeat the first line.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought you were...
What was that description?
A subtle, sensitive portrayal of the delicate social balance found in a small-town college in the early 1960s.
No, wait, the next line.
The stark, Bergman-esque film attempts to convey the intense alienation that the universal freshman is faced with.
Bergman-esque? Is that what he did?
Yeah!
That's
Isn't it
funny.
so great? Oh my god. Okay, and then he just kind of keeps this, like, silly little, like, proper...
Wait, actually...
Yeah.
For anybody who's listening, if you are not familiar with Ingmar Bergman, he's a very, very serious... I don't remember if he's Scandinavian or German or something, but very...
European.
Serious Northern European movie director. I mean, actually, I would say there's probably some humor in his movies, but they're
not this kind of humor.
Dark. They're dark and they are stark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the writer keeps up with this, like, kind of facade of, like, a serious film critic review throughout the rest of it, which I love. Like, if this is the way to fuck around and talk about this movie if you're gonna do it. It's so good.
Right, and I feel like, too, if we're, like, also lampooning the film critic, I feel like every film critic loves to be able to compare something to Ingmar Bergman.
Exactly. He is lampooning. That's so perfect. He continues, the film is filled with tender, touching moments of artistry, such as when Bluto disarmingly crushes beer cans against his forehead, or when Kent Flounder Dorfman innocently kills the sadistic ROTC leader's horse in the dean's office, or when Professor Jennings turns a couple of the brothers on to pot, the word seems archaic today, and ends up discussing the possibility of our solar system being an atom in a molecule on the fingernail of a giant being, or when Eric Otter Stratton pretends to be the Amherst boyfriend of a recently deceased co-head at the nearby Emily Dickinson College, and ends up being seduced, according to plan, by the girl's pitying roommate. All in all, it is a moving, inspired film as relevant today as the National Lampoon itself. Some will find Animal House offensive or sexist. Considering the time period, however, it seems to be a fairly accurate, though overblown, portrayal of college life at the time. As Chris Miller, one of the writers, puts it, 1962 was the twilight of fun time in college. A year later, it would all begin to change. And this is, I kind of think, where I noted about, like, having this sort of pinnacle of, like, the best of times before going into the Vietnam War.
Yeah. Because 1962 is a very specific year, and they make a big deal out of making sure you know it is 1962.
But
this movie.
I love that review so much.
That's really funny. I like that too.
It's so well done. I love it. Yeah. And then, of course, we have friend of the pod. You want to take a guess?
I don't know. I blocked them all from my memory.
Friend of the pod, Roger Ebert.
Oh, Roger,
who gave Animal House a rousing 4 stars.
That's good.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'm gonna just take one paragraph that he's got, because it's really great. The movie is vulgar, raunchy, ribald, and occasionally scatological. It is also the funniest comedy since Mel Brooks made The Producers.
Wait, pause. This came out after The Producers?
Yeah, The Producers was in 1968, Animal House was 78.
Did it come out after Blazing Saddles?
That is a good question.
Because going back to that other...
Blazing Saddles is 74.
I didn't realize how early those movies were. Mm-hmm. Going back to that other critic who was like, nobody's ever done humor
I know,
like
Blazing
this.
Saddles? Really? Yeah.
Because I actually, while watching this, I was like, this gives some real, like, Blazing Saddles vibes.
No, the reviewer wasn't saying, no one's done humor like this. The producer from National Lampoon is saying, no one's done humor like this. The guy who has who is not involved in the writing whatsoever.
Whoever said that, I just think doesn't know anything about comedy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Roger goes on to say, Animal House is funny for some of the same reasons the National Lampoon is funny, and Second City and Saturday Night Live are funny. Because it finds some of the precarious balance between insanity and accuracy, between cheerfully wretched excess, and an ability to reproduce the most revealing nuances of human behavior. In one sense, there has never been a campus life like this movie's Faber University, which was apparently founded by the lead pencil tycoon and has a motto, knowledge is good. In another sense, Faber University is a microcosm of, I was going to say our society, but why get serious? Let someone else discuss the symbolism of Bluto's ability to brush a beer can against his forehead.
I love that. That's actually so funny.
That's a good one, Roger. That's a good one. I like it. But I think it's also interesting that he highlights it's the same reason that National Lampoon and Second City and Saturday Night Live are funny, and then he highlights, like, the essential through line of humor there, but also, like, those are, like, it was, again, like we talked about at the beginning, it's the same circles of the same people doing the same kind of work and writing and acting together.
This was the 70s comedy scene.
Exactly.
Those places. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. All right. And then I'm going to wrap us with critics like we always do with my favorite portion, which is the silly IMDb titles.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes.
If your review is too long, you probably don't like teen sex comedies anyway. If you write more than 10 lines about this classic, you are taking it way too seriously. That's the title in the first line. And I agree.
Well, I mean, I feel like we're getting close to 10 lines just with that title, though.
Yeah. Sick, depraved, juvenile, disgusting, lewd, perverted. Yep, must be Animal House. The only negative one I could find was, the title was, It's Hard to Believe This Was Once Considered Hilarious. But then my favorite, it's not a perfect movie, but who cares?
Okay.
Which I feel sums it up.
I mean, I feel like the people reading these reviews looking for recommendations probably would like more than who cares.
Who cares? That's fair.
Yeah.
And then I've got some tarot.
Tarot.
Okay. So I pulled 2 cards and
let's get mystical.
I pulled 2 cards and they're not for any individual because I do feel like, as has happened a lot throughout this particular season, I have ended up with movies that are very relied upon like the whole ensemble of characters as opposed to a single, which I think is kind of fitting for like school and education.
I think it's also fitting for a movie that is trying to be both overtly and subtly subversive to have an ensemble cast. I think it's easier to do that with an ensemble cast. And we could get into my whole favorite analysis of one particular baseball movie by one particular critic about how that movie used a multi-perspective viewpoint to create a democratic approach to narrative. But yeah. Anyway, but we'll let some other critics talk about society and democracy and all that.
Exactly. Thank you, Roger. So first, as I mentioned previously, where early on when Boone's girlfriend Kate makes a joke at the Rush Party that Otter and Boone are well-known homosexuals, and I was like, oh, but what if they were? So the first card I have pulled is for Otter and Boone collectively, and is unsurprisingly, or at least I think so, queer or not, Otter and Boone as a duo are absolutely, like, the lovers. Meaning that, like, they are, in fact, a duo. They are connected to each other in, like, a meaningful friendship that's based on shared values and beliefs and joys. They have a philosophy that they have built together through their time of enjoyment in college, which is that in the face of any problem, you just have another party.
Yes. Well, and in the beginning when we meet, after we meet the two of them upstairs in their room, but when they come downstairs and Otter's doing his whole greeting
Eric
to
Stratton,
everybody.
Rush chairman, damn glad to meet you.
And then what does Boone say as a follow-up as he follows him around?
Oh, I don't remember. Does he say something?
He does. It's really, he basically says the same thing, but it's something like he's Eric Stratton, Rush president, and he's damn glad to meet. He basically just copies him.
Yeah. Or I think at one point he like runs off before he can introduce himself to somebody, and then Boone does that like in his stead. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they are linked in a really interesting way, and kind of share, as everybody in the fraternity shares, this belief system of just like being completely 100% honest to themselves where they are at this point in their lives. Which brings me to the other card that I have pulled, which is for Delta Tau Chi, the fraternity as a whole. I felt was appropriate. And like literally on the other hand, as a whole, I think the fraternity gets the devil, which is neat in this particular instance because like in traditionally illustrated decks, the devil is like the lovers kind of flipped, so it's actually got the same figures on the lovers card, but that are being held like prisoner by the devil, like shackled to him. So anyway, the devil is all about like being stuck in bad habits, being like held back by your patterns of behavior. And so while of course like the day ends happily for all of the deltas, they fuck up the homecoming parade and get up to their shenanigans and have a good silly time.
And also, apparently, do then get to graduate from college.
Exactly, and as I said, like
except for the one guy who is never seen again, D-Day. As the little scroll shows at the end, they're like all successful in their own ways, and I would argue that whereabouts unknown is successful for D-Day. The plot of the movie really hinges around their like their inability to progress, and like the fact that they're kind of these perpetual lost boys. Just kind of stuck in these partying ways and their belief systems and that sort of thing. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just like in an honest reflection of as a fraternity, and as like I think too, since we were talking also about like just the time of the worlds they were in, a sort of like moment of like this as what was it Chris Miller said? It was the twilight of fun time in college because a year later it would all begin to change. And so this sort of even, I think, desire to like want to be stuck in that sort of hinging moment of like right before everything hit the fan and the world got a lot darker. Didn't mean for us to end on such a sour note. I'm sorry. Well, I just, I think to the point of the flippant attitude towards everything, one of my favorite lines in this movie is when Otter is trying to devise some plan to defend them, and he says that he is pre-law, and somebody else goes, aren't you pre-med? And he goes, it's the same thing.
Yep. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so
that's when they're actually like in front of the behavior, like the disciplinary board.
Oh yeah. I mean, stay witchy, keep getting into the movie magic. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always like to say that this film reminds me that I'm glad I didn't ever do any kind of Greek activities in college.
Yeah, I was thinking that a lot too. I was like, God, I hate frats and sororities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So.
And I'm also glad that I went to a school where it was not cool to be in a frat.
I was gonna ask if like there was. I remember. I'm sure we've talked about this before, but I was like curious about like your experiences of like Panhellenic organizations at NYU, because it's a big thing in the South.
Yeah, at NYU, it is not cool to be part of a frat or a sorority. At least that was my experience of the school.
Yes.
And I mean, NYU has a very strange social life culture just by its nature. It's a really big school without a campus in one of the biggest cities in the country. But yeah, there were frats and sororities, but they were not big, and they did not have a large presence on campus. They did, however, have penthouses.
Are you That's probably the only reason people ever joined them, was for the nice housing.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, on that note, you can find your Silver Nitrate Witches on various online platforms at LJ Valenza and at Bellang303. Thanks to Fine Motor for the use of their songs Highway Moon and Movie. You can check out more about the band at finemotormusic.com. Thanks for listening, stay witchy, keep watching movies, and don't join a fraternity.